Morning, crafters. Today is August 1st, and that starts a new month for us. This month we're going to be working with wire. You can use wire for just about any project that you would use baker's twine for or any kind of string for. Wires come in a bunch of different sizes, and the sizes are called gauges. And the higher the number, the thinner the wire is. So a 18 gauge would be thicker than a 24 gauge. And they usually, the most common that you find are even numbers, but they do come in every size. And just a little history on it. Years ago, they don't use the standard anymore, but years ago, when they were making wire, it would be it would come off of the mold, and then they would roll it, and the first roll would be 1 gauge, the second roll would be 2 gauge, the third roll would be 3 gauge type stuff. And each time they roll it, it would get thinner and thinner. Think of it as like a breadstick. When you're making a breadstick, you get off a bunch of the dough, and then you form it into a elongated thing, and then you start rolling. Well, the more you roll on the dough, the thinner the breadstick becomes and the longer it becomes. Well, that's the same concept with wire. And each of the gauges is a little bit different to work with. I have a 20 gauge wire here, and this is a pretty easy gauge to work with. It requires a little strength and bending, but not a whole lot. 18 gauge is thicker, and it can get a little difficult, and it does require some special tools, I think, to work with. And 16 gauge is even much thicker, but you can make some really spectacular things with it. I basically like working with a 20 gauge or maybe even a 22 gauge when I'm working on any kind of craft project, just because it's a little easier to work with and it's not so hard on the hands. So I have a 20 gauge here, and I have a 24 gauge here. And you can immediately see the difference in the wires. You can see immediately how different they are. Now, you can spend a lot of money on wire, or you can just buy simple wire. The difference between wire and jewelry making wire is because it has a coating on it to keep it from tarnishing. And most jewelry wire is wrapped around a copper or a brass wire, and then has a coating of like silver on it or gold or different colors and stuff like that. That type of coating can scratch off the more you manipulate it with any kind of tools. And the reason that they put a coating on it is, to protect it from tarnishing, and then also like for ears. So if you make any kind of earrings or anything, the plastic coating on any wire would be, people would not have allergies to it. So you wouldn't have to stick with like a pure stainless sterling silver type wire. You can purchase your wire in different locations too. You can get it at any kind of like hobby store, but you're going to pay more for it. This was purchased at a hobby store, and this is a brass wire, and it's a coated wire. This one I just purchased at the hardware store, and this is where I find it's the cheapest to purchase. You can get much more. You can get like 3 times the amount at a hardware store that you'd be paying at a hobby store. And you can get brass, you can get aluminum, you can get copper. Copper, it can be a little more expensive. I find that working with brass is a wonderful product to work with because it almost looks like gold. And the wire that you get in the hardware stores is not coated. It's not jewelry wire, which means you can anodize it, which just means tarnish. You can tarnish the wire if you happen to like that look. So if you're going to get any wire and work with wire and you're just starting out, I would suggest getting it a 20 gauge, not much more than a 20 gauge, or even a 22. It's a little bit thinner, and they're very easy and a little more pliable to work with. And I would just say go to the hardware store, just pick up some. It's cheap. I think I got, oh my gosh, I don't know, this was 50 feet of 20 gauge, and I probably paid, I don't know, $3-4 for it or something. This one is 24 yards, and I probably paid 8 or 9 for it. So You know, it's just, but this is a 24 gauge, which is thinner. So anytime you purchase thinner wire, you're going to get more on your spool than if you purchase thicker wire. The reason that I got into working with wire working, is because I was working on a project and I wanted a wire flower. I just had this vision of a real cute wire flower with baker's twine wrapped around it, and I thought that that would make a real cute card. And I couldn't find any. I couldn't find any wired flowers like how I wanted them to look. So I said, well, how difficult can it be if I go and get some wire and make my own? So that's what I did. I went to the hardware store and I just bought some wire. And they're so easy to make. So what I would suggest is, like I said, a 22 gauge you work with. And for this one, we're just going to pull off some. I don't even measure. We're just going to pull off some wire. And one of the things that if you're going to need is you need something to snip the wire. I have jewelry scissors here because jewelry scissors have got, can you see that triangle shape to them? This edge back here cuts a flat edge. This edge cuts a pointy edge. Whenever you're working with jewelry, you always want a flat edge. You don't want any points on it that could scratch. And so I have jewelry wires, but any kind of wire cutters would work if you're just using this on a crafting project. So you just cut off what you want. You can also buy a ton of tools to help you with your wire working, but I found it's just as easy to use things that you have on hand at home. Like when I was making my flower the first time, I just used a pencil. That's all I did. I just wanted to wind it around a pencil. So I'm going to imagine that I'm going to use part of this for the stem, and then I'm just going to start coiling. I'm just going to start coiling the wire around my pencil here. And I'm going to make sure I get at least 7 coils on here. Everything that we do in crafting and stuff, we always tend to do odd because it's more pleasing to the eye. And I found that 7 looks really good if I do this little flower. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll wrap this one because I want the ends to be even. 7. So now I've got 7. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 little coils on here. And I'm just going to push them together. And if you ever get into jewelry making, or if you need things to attach, like if you have any kind of charm or something that you want to put on a project that you're working on, and it's got a little hole in it, you can make jump rings. That's exactly what these things are. These are jump rings. And so what you would do if you're going to make a jump ring is you take this off, and you would just cut each one of these rings separately, and then you'd have a simple little ring that you then can use to attach. You don't have to go out and buy that stuff. You can make it. You can make jump rings so cheap. So now we've got this little coil. Isn't that cute just the way it looks right now? So what I'm going to do to make my flower is I'm just going to start flattening, pressing this top down. So instead of the coil being spongy, it's just going to be flattened. I'm just pushing it down, and I'm just going to flatten it. I'll do that on my surface here. Okay, so now I'm flattening it. And what I want to do is, as I'm flattening it, I just want to just kind of like pull these little circles apart. I'm going to kind of pull them apart, stretch them apart. I'm going to stretch them into individual little petals and just kind of pull them apart. See how I'm pulling them apart? See that? Okay, and then you see this edge back here that's all coiled together, not the loose edge, but it's basically the part where all of the loops meet. I'm just going to start curving that around into a circle. And then I'm going to bring this one down and around. And there we go. We got kind of like a cute little flower. And just keep working it around. It's pretty easy to maneuver. And look at that. Isn't that sweet? We have our own little flower. Now I'm going to take one end and wrap it around the other. I'm going to try and get it up as close as I possibly can to the rest of these. And now I'm just going to twist. And I'm just going to keep twisting because I'm going to make a stem. Now if you wanted to, you could use part of this wire to make a petal. Or you just could continue twisting on down, which is what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to use baker's twine in the center to look like petals just by tying a little bow around it. Okay, so there we go. We have this adorable little flower. Isn't that just the sweetest little thing? And how easy was that to make? That was so simple. And then you can get some baker's twine and tie some baker's twine around here. Let me see if I can find Got some regular jute twine. I'm just going to tie that up on there. Just put a little bow on it. The bows act as the petals. And now I've got a sweet little embellishment to put on my card. Isn't that adorable? Okay, so we made that flower. And then another thing that we can make is we can make a coil. Coils are real popular and they're real easy to make. I'm going to get some more of my 20 gauge out. And you just need something to start it with. If you're going to get into actually wire wrapping, the one tool that I would suggest you get besides the actual cutters is this tool. It's a round pair of pliers. And this tool helps you make coils. Helps you turn the wire easier. You can just turn it around like that. But if you haven't got something like that, here's our bamboo skewer. You can always wrap a coil around a bamboo skewer. And on the end that's loose, you can always get a regular pair of pliers and you can just work it down. Or you can always cut it off too. Just grab onto it and work it down. Now, regular pliers like these will put some marks on your wire just because pliers have got these little grippy teeth on the inside of them, and that will put some marks on your wire. But if you're working on a crafting project, it's really no big deal. Okay, so now what I've done is I got myself a coil, and I'm going to use my pliers for this. And I'm going to smush this down. Okay, what I want to do is I'm going to start wrapping the coil around itself. I'm going to hold it with the pliers, and I'm just going to start turning. Do you see how I'm doing that? I'm just slowly turning the wire. I'm going to eventually make a sweet little coil just by holding it and turning it like this. And then these coils can be used on any project, any card. They look real cute on card. And I like to use them as center for flowers. Now you can always make your own flowers like what we have done in the past with our own paper and just make up our own flowers. Or you can use the kind that you buy in the stores, in the craft stores, like Prima flowers and stuff like that. And these make really, really sweet embellishments for them. And you just keep coiling, around and around and around. And then eventually you're going to have a cute little coil. Can you see that? And see how it just keeps coiling around and around? And then when you get it as thick as you want, you can make it, you know, as big a coil as you want or as little a coil as you want. And then you can just get yourself, I'm just going to use one of these kind of flowers, and they always have a center in them. I'm just going to stick that through there, and look at that. Isn't that sweet? We now have got a cute little center in our flower here. We also have a stem that we can use on a project. Isn't that sweet? Here's another one I did. This one's got a few little more coils in it. Might be a little easier to see. Now, of course, when you glue this down, it will hold it in place. You can always put some hot glue on here and then stick this in here to hold it in place. Isn't that sweet? Okay, so we've got them done. Then another thing that you can do is you can, instead of using a needle and thread on a button, why not put wire in it? It's very simple to do. Get yourself a cute button. You got this button. Just going to cut off some more wire and just put it through. And I'm going to give it a couple twists in the center. And I'm just going to use my pliers for it because the pliers will give me a tighter twist. And just twist it. Okay, and there you go. Now you can coil the ends of this. I'm just going to use my tool here and coil them up. To make a cute little little curl on the wire. You could pretend like it's a bow. And you could make your little loops like that. And this other one could have been a loop, and there could have been a little bow on the front. Here's one I made, and I just coiled it up. Put a whole bunch of coils on it. But this would be cute too if you just want it to just make it look like a bow. And I'll straighten that out. And that's the nice thing about wire. If you don't like what you've done, you can always straighten it out. Might have a few little kinks in it, but so what? Adds to the character. So let's just kind of flip that over. I'll straighten this out a little bit. And you get the idea. See, it could be like a little bow on the front. And then there's a couple different ways that you can adhere your items. I have found that hot glue, my standby, works very well. E6000 is another product that is pretty much industrial strength glue. This stuff will glue anything. Takes a long time to dry though, but it's a super strong adhesive and it dries clear. And this works real well if you're working with metal, particularly metal on metal. Or glossy accents. Glossy accents dries clear. Glossy accents will adhere any of your embellishments that have got metal onto your product, your item that you're crafting. So any of them, hot glue, E6000, glossy accents, or try your favorite glue. Who knows, it might work real well. Okay, crafters, that's it for today. Just a little recap here. We made these cute little coils. We made our very, very sweet little flower. I just love that flower. Here's some more flowers that I made. You can see that I twisted. What I ended up doing, instead of keeping these like this, I actually took one of them and I just started twisting them. So I twisted them onto themselves. Here's another one. This one's got a little open center. This would be cute to put a button on the inside or a coil. Here's another one. I just love the way these things look. And the stems, I just love the stems. Now, if you need to, when you're done, you can either, coil the stem back up on itself, put a little loop on it or something, or just cut it off. Particularly like on this one here, where it was a little uneven at the bottom. Just cut it off with your scissors. And then we made those coils. And here's another little thing that you can do with coils. Isn't that sweet? It looks so cute on cards. Just coil up into a whole bunch of different shapes. I love the way these things look. Well, there you have it today, crafters. We're just starting to work with wire, and there's a lot more that I've got to show you for the rest of the month. So stay tuned, and I'll see you back here again next Friday. Have a good day and a good weekend. Bye for now, crafters. Thank you for joining me on this segment of KISS. Keep it simple, Sylvia.